What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Boozer here. Thanks for stopping by. Today's video, we are on test server here today, so thank you Plarium for allowing us access. And in this video, I'm going to try my best not to say Chimera and instead say Chimera, because that is the proper pronunciation of it. However, I have Chimera fused into my brain and I can't get rid of it. And this is my 10th retake after saying Chimera so many times. Anyways, we are doing a Chimera video, a little bit of a piggyback off of the video I uploaded yesterday about my 1-key Ultra Nightmare team that I'll probably be using on day one. It features Lydia and Marius, both free to access champions in the game. But I understand that not everyone will have these legendaries and have these champions ready to go on their accounts. So I want to show a video that basically can give people some options on how to build a team that can be successful, mainly following the general foundation of what that team was based upon. The team that I'm mentioning is the team that I used yesterday to basically hit the over 100 million Ultra Nightmare key. Keep in mind, guys, that this is endgame content. You're not going to be jumping into this after 30 days of playing this game. It's going to be really difficult stuff. You're going to need a bunch of gear on your account, a bunch of specialized champions. You're not going to be able to tackle the highest difficulty content of this boss with just like champions like Haikatoon, for example. Or can you? Oh my goodness, Haikatoon is actually going to go up against Ultra Nightmare Chimera here. Let's talk through this team while it's going. So basically, we have this team here. It's covering all the proper debuffs, all the buffs that are necessary to make this fight possible. The big thing about this is that the damage dealers are actually really hard to make work. From my testing, really max HP damage dealers are the most successful. If you're going to use traditional damage dealers, it's not going to run as well. They're not going to do as much damage, basically. So that really kind of stifles people's ability to make this type of team do a lot of damage. And ultimately, that's going to be what hold people back, right? The lack of damage. So here we got Rogard. He can do the max HP slam. Keep in mind that it's only one hit, right? So he's going to do roughly a third of what, Marius or Newt can do. However, Rogard actually brings a decreased speed, which is actually pretty insane. He also brings a decreased defense here, which means we don't have to use somebody like Lydia, for example. However, on this team, most of the damage is going to come from Geomancer, and Geomancer doesn't really rely on decreased defense or anything like that. Geomancer also brings a weaken as well. And this team is actually really good, and it's mainly a showcase of how strong Geomancer is and how strong basically a champion like Rogard is with the max HP slam. Geomancer is actually really good for this fight if you guys are lacking the usual DPS champions for this box, like max HP damage dealers. Geomancer brings a weaken. He also brings the A2 Steel. So here we have to regroup because we lost our guy. This happens from time to time. You just restart it. But Geomancer brings the A2 Buff Steel, which is actually really clutch sometimes. So that's a really nice plus for him. He also brings decreased accuracy, which is actually a pretty good plus as well if you somehow have a little bit of resistance on your guys. Like I said, Rogard is actually a really decent DPS. He only does about a third of the damage of, for example, Newt or Marius, but he's not bad. He also brings decreased defense on his A1 and then a decreased speed on his A3. He's a little bit squishy, but most damage dealers are pretty squishy. Haikatoon is basically here just to show that she's still useful even at this level. She brings increased turn meter, which means your team gets more turns, which is good. You do more damage. She brings a speed aura, which helps you go faster, get more turns. She also brings plus speed, which is good. And then she also actually brings decreased speed, which is really good too. So she brings a backup decreased speed, which is always good with, the fact that they keep changing their forms. They keep cleansing all the debuffs off. So having extra decreased speed is actually really good. So Haikatoon, really useful here. We have Demitha. She's going to bring the block damage, which is good, especially in the beginning when block damage still kind of works, because later on, the ultimate form is going to ignore the block damage stuff. But in the beginning, it's still pretty good. After that, she does bring buff extension, which is really strong. And again, we lose it here. So you see the issue here. You do have to restart a bunch of times, unfortunately. because obviously the block debuffs was not up, and once you get stunned, just the multi-hits start coming in. But the Mytha here brings the block damage, she brings continuous heals, she brings extension. So very, very good. And she's an epic. If you have her for your clan boss, you can basically just swap a gear set on her and use her for this build. The extension is actually really good. We do have everybody that can lay buffs in protection sets so that their buffs can be protected. There's going to be substitutes here, right? There's going to be lots of substitutes here. This team is not like set in stone or anything like that. Like I said, we're going to cover the buffs and cover the debuffs that you need. And then we have Freya here. Unfortunately, Freya's just really strong and really hard to replace. If you replace Freya, it's probably going to mean that you're going to probably have to replace High Katoon as well. For example, you could use Mithrala instead of Freya and then substitute High Katoon for like Elva or something. Because you need to increase speed and you need a block debuff. And ideally a cleanser too. I guess this team could work if you had 2 block debuff champions. It's possible because you need that block debuff protected up all the time, or else you'll be facing a ton of debuffs. It's possible that you don't need the cleanser, but at least 2 block debuffs from 2 champions, and then just let the RNG take over. So here, like the ram's not a big deal as long as you have protected block debuffs up or be able to cleanse off all his stuff. It's not a big deal. I don't think this purple bar here is possible to take out. I don't think I've ever done it before, but I don't think it's possible to take out. See here, like we get the double hit again because there's no block debuffs up, and then our guy dies. And this team without a reviver, it just, it doesn't stand up, right? You just have to keep doing it over and over again. If you had a reviver, the consistency of the team would definitely go up. And yeah, Freya also brings increased defense as well. And everybody, like I said, is in a protection set. But here, I'm going to show you guys some completed runs here. I did test this out a little bit, and we had some decent results. But just to show you guys what we're working with here. All right, so on Brutal, this team did 60 million damage. So on Brutal, it's a very easy 1 key. 1 key on Brutal is like 36 million. The jump from Brutal to Nightmare is really high. Nightmare, the top chest key is like 80-ish million. So it's more than double what Brutal can do. So it's really difficult to hit that even Nightmare threshold for the top chest. I'll show you guys a little bit more results here. Oh, just a quick comment here. You can notice the Rollguard damage discrepancy versus Geomancer. Keep in mind that champions like Rollguard and Geomancer, they actually do more damage for a higher difficulty. Because max HP, you take off more HP from the boss when they have more HP in higher difficulties. Geomancer, you deal more damage when you take more damage. That's that kind of idea, right? But you can kind of see here Rollguard doing 19 million, Geomancer doing 28 million. So here is the result from Ultra Nightmare. On Ultra Nightmare, we actually did 38 million. Keep in mind that the top key for Ultra Nightmare is, I believe, 112 million. So you're not going to be able to 2 key with this. And it's mainly a struggle with the damage dealers. Your damage dealer is just not going to do enough. Geomancer is doing 21 million here. We are against Void Affinity. I don't know if that matters. Actually, let me just check here. Void Affinity against the ultimate form. Maybe the affinity changes when he's in the different forms here. We'll just have to keep a lookout. I think it's Force Affinity for each form. But anyways, Geomancer does more damage against affinities. In this case, he's doing 21 million for a complete run. So 65 turn complete run. If you guys recall, Marius and Newt were doing about 38 to 40 million each, roughly, when they were doing the Ultra Nightmare run. Whenever my team does over 100 million, they do about 40% of the damage each. So that's kind of what we're talking about in terms of damage discrepancy. You could sub in like one of the triple max HP damage dealers for Rollguard, and then you're probably adding on, an extra 20-25 million damage to your total team. So that's kind of like the damage discrepancy here between somebody like a Rollguard and then somebody like Marius or Newt. So here's another run just to show it's kind of consistent. It's going to land around 35-40 million, for example. This time, Rollguard doing significantly less damage, probably because he was probably dead most of the time. And like I said, here's a run with Marius added in. Geomancer doing basically very consistent 21 million damage here. However, Marius doing an additional 25 million damage more than Rollguard. So you basically just tack that on and you have a 65 million key, right? Which is basically like, it's an easy two key Ultra Nightmare. But this one was also with like different supports and also the decreased defense and weaken applied by Lydia. So here, like, unfortunately, Rogar provides the decreased defense and Marius doesn't. So subbing out somebody directly for Rogar is not going to work out exactly the same. But it shows roughly what it is capable of, right? So you got Geomancer, like I said, 21 million, basically identical to what he was doing before. And Marius is going to chip in about 20 million extra on top of Rogar. Here I did a damage test with just like a generic damage deal with Rathalos. We went back to Nightmare difficulty. So if you guys recall, in Nightmare difficulty, we're doing about 35 million damage here. So keep that in mind. So with Rathalos, he does about the same as like the Rogar. So a good solid Rathalos. My Rathalos is in 6-piece Slayer gear. Good Rathalos basically does about the same as the Rogar. I mean, is that really that much of a drag? I mean, we're doing Nightmare difficulty. Rogar would do more damage against Ultra Nightmare difficulty. They both have A1 decreased defenses, so they both kind of work the same. But Rogar does have the decreased speed, which is important too. So what does it all mean? It means basically that to do this difficulty boss, you need certain damage dealers to be able to do enough damage to actually 2-key this boss. I'm not too sure right now what else we can do, but in terms of epic or more accessible champions, non-legendary champions, it's going to be pretty tough. Geomancer, he works. Geomancer no doubt works, but he just doesn't work enough. He just doesn't do enough work. Right now, his damage is roughly that of most other good normal damage dealers. So if you don't have very good gear, if you don't have very good like damage dealers or geared out really well, then Geomancer can be like a cheaper substitute for those good damage dealers. However, Geomancer doesn't match up to the max HP hitters at this point. As for somebody like Rogar, I mean, Rogar can be a suitable damage option, but he's not going to be like lighting people on fire even at Ultra Nightmare. So it's really, really tough to make it all work, unfortunately. But a team like this can easily handle brutal difficulty, for example. So for example, I showed that it can basically double the brutal top key. So that might be a start for people that kind of don't really have too many champions, but are more progressing, you know, through the mid game and so forth. Because you still need some champions and you still need some gear, to be honest. Because like I said, the main thing about these teams is that you're looking for 9-piece protection sets on each one of these champions. So for example, like my High Katoon, for example, she's just in protection set, but she's also has pretty good protection gear, right? Like 300 speed with enough accuracy. You need about 400 accuracy for Ultra Nightmare, so keep that in mind. And it's going to scale down after for each difficulty down, but you need some gear, right? You need some gear to actually handle this content. Otherwise, it's just going to be really tough. So for Demitha here, same thing. Demitha has protection gear on just to protect all the buffs that she lays out. She's quick, there's no accuracy needed, and all that. Freya, same thing. Freya, I mean, Freya's a newer champion. Maybe people don't have her, but she was, she was a guarantee from a training event. She's obviously hard to get, but people might actually have her more than other legendaries. But yeah, War Master on her. Got the Brimstone, which helps her for damage, and then 9-piece to help protect all her buffs. She's really good for this content, actually. She brings the increased defense, big shield, and then she brings the block debuffs with a cleanse and then a turn meter boost. Really, really good. And a good passive to protect your team, keep your team going. And here's my Rogar, just built in whatever gear. You could, spice things up with anything you got, like Relentless or something, but he's going to have enough crit damage to max out his hits. He has accuracy to land the decreased speed here. Also decreased defense, which is really good. You don't need decreased defense if you're running like Geomancer for most of his damage. So just keep that in mind. And then finally his masteries went down to War Master, so you get some additional damage against the boss. Try to make him not too squishy, but he's still pretty squishy. And lastly, we got the Goat Man here. We got Geomancer, the king of epics. The king of epics. I'm gonna call him that. The king of epics. I got him in a little cheeky toxic set here for some additional damage. it's a good set to put on a damage dealer that doesn't need any, you know, lethal gear or any specific sets. Toxic gear is just going to give him a couple more million damage of damage over a long period of time against the boss. He's not, you know, he's quick, he's got accuracy to land stuff, and then War Master is the final pick here. So that's the build for Geomancer. Doing really good. Definitely recommend Toxic gear. The problem with Toxic gear on him is that if you have Toxic gear on a champion on your team, you don't want to have another champion laying down poisons, for example, because you might actually block out his HP burn, and then that's where most of your damage, that's where all of your damage is coming from, basically. So you don't want to lock out the debuff bar. If you didn't know, you can only have 10. So be careful about that if you use Toxic, because he does land quite a bit of poisons, especially since we're going so fast, of course. So I tried this with the Tomb Lord. Tomb Lord is actually really good in terms of being a damage dealer and being able to apply good debuffs. So he has an A1 decreased speed and then a decreased defense on his A3. It's a 4-turn cooldown, so it's not going to be up all the time. But this one, he has a big poison here, so 4 poisons. If this lands and Geomancer, you know, doesn't have the HP burn up and then it blocks him out, it's really bad. So somebody like Tomb Lord probably isn't the best to pair with Geomancer, and that's just something to be aware of with any champion that has these multi debuffs popping out. To pair with Geomancer. So for example, somebody like Dracomorph, who's actually a really good damage dealer, single target damage dealer, but he does bring 4 poisons here on his A2, which can be a negative when you don't want to stack the bar up. So I mentioned there are some substitutes to this type of team. So for example, if you don't have if you have the luxury of Elva is a really good substitute here. She brings increased speed, a revive, which is really good, a cleanse, and then a block debuff. Very, very strong champion with the speed aura as well. So she brings a lot of support options if you don't have Freya, for example. If you have Elva, she's really good. Another option would be like somebody like Mithrala. Mithrala does bring a cleanse. She brings shielding, strengthen, so it makes your team a little bit more durable. Also increased defense. So put her in a 9-piece protection set, and then she can do some work for you. She also lands some poisons as well, so she can pitch in a little bit of damage. But then you have to cover the block debuffs, right? So the problem is having block debuffs and increased speed on one champion is very difficult. The only other champion that I have in my possession, other than Elva, that can fulfill that role of speed and block debuffs, you guys take a guess. It's Sifi. So if you don't have Elva, Sifi is the other champion with, you know, increased speed and block debuffs. It's really hard to grab those on a champion, and this is what I have. If you don't want to use High Katoon, or you find High Katoon a little bit, you know, too squishy, you can actually try this champion out. He's actually pretty good. What's his name? This guy, Tagore. Tagore is actually not too bad as a replacement for High Katoon. He brings increased speed, turn meter boost. Increased speed, heal. So he brings the same increased speed as High Katoon. Instead of turn meter boost, you get a heal. You get an A1 increased defense. So it kind of works, kind of doesn't. It's only on one target as well. But then he does bring a revive. The revive could actually be useful, especially if you just want more consistent runs. If you have a Tagore built out, it might be worth using him. He also does a little bit of healing on his passive as well. So he might be an interesting choice. The other epic that might be actually interesting is oops, that's how do you spell this? Damn, beast. There you go. No, I better edit that out. Oops. Anyways, this guy, Beast Feeder, damn it. Yeah. So Beast Feeder here brings he brings a shield, and then he brings increased speed and then increased accuracy as well. He's not a bad candidate for a 9-piece protection set as well. Just get some extra buffs in there. And then another champion that's actually worth considering is actually Wixwell. Wixwell works pretty good in the spot where Freya would be. Wixwell brings the shields and then increased defense as well with an extension. Like I said, extensions are actually really, really good, just because they prolong your protected buffs. So Wixwell in a 9-piece protection set can work pretty good. He doesn't bring too much else to the fight. Provokes doesn't work. Decreased attack, I mean, it's good, but it's not too insane. And then the counterattack is okay, but it's not too insane. Also a liability if the counterattack gets stolen and it's not protected. So a little bit of a negative here with his passive, but his shield's protection and then the extension is actually really, really good. Obviously, if you have this guy is probably going to be slotting into your team. He's going to be the GOAT in this in this boss fight because of all he brings, right? He brings a cleanse, he brings increased defense, shield, protected coming from his kit already, so you don't need a 9-piece protection set on him, so it makes it a little bit easier to gear out. He also brings A1 buff extension, which is really, really good, like I said. And like I said, a cleanse here and the block debuff, which is absolutely insane. So this guy would be, you know, almost an auto slot into most teams, I would say. He's really, really good, but not everyone's going to have him. He's limited time champion, so not everyone's going to have him. Another suggestion I would have for people trying to do this with limited resources is Brimstone. Brimstone actually does a decent amount of damage to him. At least on Ultra Nightmare, they're doing 350,000 per hit. So one 10% max HP slams about, you know, 600 to a million, depending if you have defense down or weekend down. But a Brimstone hit is 350k. So it's decent amount of damage. So bring Brimstone. If you have champions with Phantom Touch, might be worth using as well. Phantom Touch deals not too insane damage, but it deals, you know, some extra hits, right? So it can pitch in some damage there. But yeah, anywho, that's going to be it for the video. Hopefully this shows you guys a little bit more champions and shows their capabilities of what they can do. It doesn't look too promising for the highest difficulty in this boss fight with, you know, mediocre champions, to be honest. We might be able to figure something out, obviously, once the community gets a hold of the Chimera boss and strangles it. You know, we'll figure out some new ways to beat it. But I just want to show you guys what some of these other champions are capable of on a more, you know, accessible scale. And of course, Geomancer is still proving that he's one of the GOATs, if not the GOAT, King Epic in this game, in terms of boss damage anyways. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully it was informative to you guys. If you guys enjoy the content, make sure you guys hit that like button, leave me a comment, hit that subscribe for future content as well. And appreciate you guys watching to the end. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys in the next one.